We'll walk down the lane in happy refrain, and singing, just singing in the rain.
Singing in the Rain is certainly the ultimate MGM music.
There had to be a scene where it would be raining and someone would sing.
It's very, very important to my career.
It was thrilling, exciting, hard labor, but fun.
There was something important going on.
Hey, Gene, do you want to...
Oh, hi. I'm Debbie Reynolds. We're here on the very lot where we shot Singing in the Rain to celebrate its 50th anniversary. You know, when we made the picture, no one had the slightest idea that one day it would be listed among the greatest films of all time. We simply thought we were making a big, splashy MGM musical, like so many others that were so popular in the 1950s. Now, if you've never seen the movie, you may ask what makes Singing in the Rain so special. For years, film historians have analyzed this tightly woven story, spectacular musical numbers, and wonderful performances, only to come to the same conclusion that it's just a fabulous movie. The plot of Singing in the Rain revolves around a time in Hollywood when silent pictures made the painful transition to sound in the late 1920s. This period was all too memorable in the history of MGM. Incorporated in 1924, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer became a giant in the film industry under the direction of production heads Irving Thalberg and L.B. Mayer. The studio was a city unto itself, with thousands of employees who did their part in keeping the cameras rolling. In 1927, a menace had made its way to the screen called the talkies, the first of which were mostly musicals. But MGM had a galaxy of stars under contract who were unequipped to sing or even speak on camera. Many silent screen stars didn't survive the talkie revolution. In 1928, Irving Thalberg decided to produce MGM's first musical. He had started searching for material for the film when a lyricist from New York's Ten Pan Alley named Arthur Freed grabbed at the opportunity. Freed arranged to meet with Thalberg to pitch his best songs with composer Nacio Herb Brown. Thalberg was so delighted with the songs that he fashioned MGM's first all-talking, all-singing, all-dancing motion picture around them, entitled The Broadway Melody. The musical became a tremendous hit and went on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture of 1929.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
Brown and Freed were hired again for MGM's next big musical extravaganza, the Hollywood Review of 1929, for which they wrote their best-known song. Nacio Herb Brown originally wrote the melody to Singing in the Rain with a lyric soprano in mind. But after Arthur Freed performed his magic, the song became the bouncy, show-stopping finale of this smash hit movie. Arthur Freed had an auspicious start at MGM, to say the least. Freed and Brown were put under contract to MGM and continued a successful collaboration as the studio's top songwriting duo.
He had written a number of songs and he wanted to be a producer. And he got MGM to buy the rights to the book, The Wizard of Oz. It is he who really shepherded the picture through everything. And because of that picture and its huge success, Mayer thought Arthur Freed was a god. In fact, he was a god. That began the sort of power that he accumulated.
Arthur Freed's films just got bigger and more lavish. In 1951, he had 2 back-to-back hits with Showboat and An American in Paris, the latter of which garnered the Freed Unit an Oscar for Best Picture. And the same year, Arthur was awarded the Irving Thalberg Award for Lifetime Achievement in Motion Pictures. But little did he know that his next film would become his most famous and well-loved. The story began a few years earlier when The Hollywood Reporter announced that Arthur Freed had started preparations on a new musical entitled Singing in the Rain. The item alleged that tap dancer Ann Miller would star, along with a large cast of top studio personalities. Freed planned to use his catalog of songs in a film based on an earlier MGM picture entitled Excess Baggage. But Arthur believed an original story would serve the material better, and he enlisted the talents of his trusted writing team, Betty Comden and Adolph Green.
We came in one day and he said, "You're going to write a movie called Singin' in the Rain, and you get all my songs into it." And that was very difficult. We knew there'd have to be a scene where someone would be singing and it would be raining. That's all we knew. We had an ugly little office in the administration building. We worked many evenings. When we completed a section of it, we'd take this section in and read it to Arthur Freed. And if it passed, some stamp of approval, we'd move on.
Right.
We weren't even sure we had Gene, and Gene was working on American in Paris. And when we had a script, we read it to him, and he decided that would be his next picture.
All set, keep wherever you are. Good.
Arthur Freed's songs were all written in the period when the earliest musicals were done, 1929, 30, 31. And we made this decision that a story in that period would be the best way to use the songs. Into a musical movie later, all those things pointed us in the direction of certain songs.
Right.
Through the collaborative efforts of the creative team, the script was to undergo months of revisions, most notably to the musical numbers in the film. There was a sequence where Don and Kathy fall in love to the song, Would You, against a backdrop of changing scenery on the back lot.
The girl were I, would you?
But later, the location was moved to an empty soundstage, and the song changed to You Were Meant for Me.
You were meant for me.
The tune, I've Got a Feelin' You're Foolin', was planned for the character Zelda Zanders, played by a teenage Rita Moreno. But it was cut by the second draft. And believe it or not, Gene Kelly's version of Singin' in the Rain was not in the original script. The number was intended as a trio for Don, Kathy, and Cosmo to cheer up on the way home after their disastrous preview. But in the second draft, this plot point would become the song Good Mornin', with Gene's solo Singin' in the Rain in place. If the script had stayed as it was, the world would never have seen Gene Kelly's Singin' in the Rain. A draft of the script and a budget totaling almost $1.9 million were sent to the front office at MGM for approval. However, there was a top executive turnover in the works in 1950. Studio chief L.B. Mayer was slowly being phased out, and his successor, Dory Sherry, was now making many executive decisions. In the coming months, Mr. Mayer was fired and replaced by Sherry, but not before he gave the green light to Singin' in the Rain. It was one of his last. Once again, the Hollywood trade papers announced that Arthur Freed's new musical, Singin' in the Rain, would star Gene Kelly, with Stanley Donen as co-director, and a young hopeful, me, Debbie Reynolds. When I came to work for MGM, I was only 15 years old, fresh from winning the title of Miss Burbank of 1948. My family were Nazarene, and back then the church preached that it was immoral to be an actress in the movies. But my daddy could see that MGM was a big, hard-working family, and there was nothing depraved or evil going on. My mother also allowed it, and became very supportive of my career, though she couldn't understand why all this was happening to me. By the time I appeared in 2 Weeks with Love, I was 17 years old and had played 5 supporting roles at MGM.
Debbie had done this remarkable number called Abba Dabba Honeymoon. When you watched it, you adored her. So we said Debbie Reynolds, and Arthur said great.
Arthur wanted Gene's An American in Paris co-star, Oscar Levant, to play sidekick Cosmo Brown. But the creative team requested a dancer for the part. And when they mentioned Hoofer Donald O'Connor, Freed was won over.
It's really, really wonderful how it came about, though. They asked me to do it, and I said, yeah.
That's extraordinary. And a friend. She was lovely and beautiful. If you see her in that, and then you see her in Blackboard Jungle, most people did not know it was the same person.
My first work on the movie was taking 3 months of grueling dance lessons with dance captains, Carol Haney and lovely Jeannie Coyne, whom Jean would later marry. At the time, I wasn't a dancer at all. I was a gymnast. And I was very insecure and frightened that I wouldn't be able to keep up. But I kept right on practicing my steps. And the wonderful thing about Gene Kelly was that he made you feel you were capable of more than you had ever done. He would come in, watch my rehearsals, and say, work harder. And I wanted so much to prove to him that I could pull this off. So I worked harder. On May 22nd, 1951, we started pre-recording the musical numbers for the movie. This included Gene Kelly recording his famous Singin' in the Rain number on June 5th, and my solo, You Are My Lucky Star, on June 13th. MGM's costume and scenic shops toiled night and day, bringing old Hollywood back to life in glorious Technicolor. Walter Plunkett, who was the most gentlemanly and talented costume designer in the business, had worked on many classic films at the studio when he started the picture. And when the creative team saw his work, they were so thrilled that they set an entire musical fashion show sequence to the song Beautiful Girl. MGM art director Randall Dewell and set decorator Jacques Mapes reviewed old stock footage of MGM to recreate the look of Hollywood in the silent era. Dewell and Mapes pilfered the studio's vintage microphones, cameras, and even lighting equipment. Finally, an inter-studio production memo was issued announcing the commencement of production for Singin' in the Rain. On June 18, 1951, principal photography began with Gene and Donald's tap number, Moses Supposes. The creative team made several attempts at developing a Donald O'Connor solo for the film. The first was a specialty number written by Comden and Green called Piano Playing Pioneer. The second was the Freed Brown song, Wedding of the Painted Doll.
Gene and Stanley were so intrigued by this bag of tricks that Donald had from all through the years from when he was a kid performing, and decided that they would build a number around all of his shtick. Both Gene and Stanley went to Arthur Freed and said, we need a song for Donald O'Connor, something like Be a Clown from The Pirate. So apparently Arthur Freed came back and I said, you've got the song, it's called Make 'Em Laugh.
Make 'em laugh, don't you know?
Virtually Be a Clown, which Cole Porter had written for The Pirate. Even Irving Berlin was on the set one day visiting, and he said, Arthur, that's Be a Clown. Oh, well, let's move on.
The time on the set was people would come in and say, can I talk to you for a minute, Gene? And then they'd divulge that their father was on the first movie of sound, and at this stage it happened, and give some little tiny event. The whole studio seemed to respond to this horrendous thing called talking pictures that they had had to survive. To recreate an era that so many people could partake of as an immediate thing was kind of marvelous to do.
One of the most amusing cameos in the film is the man on screen who demonstrates the talking picture.
Notice, it is a picture of me, and I am talking.
Copious research has revealed that his name. On July 11th, we shot my solo, You Are My Lucky Star. At the time, the song was decades old and had no introductory verse, so Roger Edens wrote one for me to better flesh out my character. Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly co-directed the film as equal partners in the filmmaking process. They divided their work, always discussing what they were going to do and how they were going to shoot it.
All the things converged in a wonderful marriage to make it work. Not any one of us can take full credit for that.
There were times when Gene could be a bit stern and demanding, but he was the mastermind of the picture and had to stay extremely focused to create a great film, and he succeeded.
Is it all fun and games? Not a bit. It's a lot of different disagreements and a lot of working it out, but perhaps that abrasive situation helps. Maybe you come to something that you wouldn't have.
Gene was a perfectionist. He knew just what he wanted. He didn't want to hear no. He always said, that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way it is. And he was right, because he was absolutely brilliant and terribly talented man.
We shot the finale of the film in the studio's replica of Grauman's Chinese Theater. I needed to cry in the scene, and as I was an untrained actress at the time, I rubbed onions in my eyes for tears. I don't have to do that anymore. We study and we learn. We shot an alternate version of the main title for the movie. As you can see, this was an alternate version without umbrellas, which was later replaced by the version in the movie. At this point, I was finished with my part in the movie, but Gene and Stanley had a huge task ahead. In the following 2 months, the company would rehearse the sensational Broadway melody. The scene then continued in the bedroom of his house, where he finished with a dance. And when it was in the can, principal photography was complete. Singin' in the Rain wrapped on January 10th, 1952. After the film was edited under the supervision of Kelly and Donen, both my solo, You Are My Lucky Star, and Gene's All I Do Is Dream of You were deleted as they slowed the pace of the movie. And years later, the negatives for both numbers were lost, though a print of my song survived. The total cost of the picture came to a hefty $2.5 million, which was a big budget in 1952. The film was given a preview and received unprecedented approval ratings. And the studio's publicity machine went to work giving Singin' in the Rain a big promotional build-up to make a return on its investment. There were ads in all the trade papers, not to mention a host of promotional tie-ins with an angle on the 20s nostalgia popular in the 50s. There were Singin' in the Rain coats and parasols. A soundtrack album was cross-promoted with radio disc jockeys. There was sheet music available as well. And finally came opening day at Radio City Music Hall, where the movie was accompanied by a live Easter-themed stage show. There was even a souvenir program for the opening of the movie. In Hollywood, the whole town turned out for our premiere at the Pantages Theater. Helen Rose designed a dress, which my mother made, and Robert Wagner was my date. Oh, what a night! The reviews for the movie were almost unanimous in their praise for the film. The following Monday, Variety claimed Singin' in the Rain the weekend box office champ, grossing $95,000 on opening day. The studio had a hit and hyped it further by using its greatest asset, movie stars. Naturally, Gene was given a great deal of press. And concurrently, publicity head Howard Strickling went about promoting MGM's new contract star, me. The studio had fostered my career, and when I became a hot property with the movie, they cashed in with guns blazing. Suddenly, I was in a PR whirlwind, shooting publicity photos, promoting products, conducting radio and newspaper interviews. The angle was that I was a little girl from Burbank who made it big at MGM, which was all true. I even got my first Life magazine cover from the publicity surrounding the movie. My Hollywood dreams were coming true. In just a year, I had graduated from supporting player to top star at what my friend Esther Williams called MGM University. At the end of its theatrical release in the U.S., the movie had tripled its investment, earning an impressive $7.7 million. Although it was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, it lost in both categories. Some speculated that this was the result of An American in Paris sweeping the Oscars in the previous year. Singin' in the Rain provided a springboard for Donald O'Connor and Sid Charisse as well. After the movie, we all went on to make successful movie musicals for years to come. Arthur Freed also went on to further successes with The Bandwagon, Brigadoon, and the Oscar-winning Gigi. In time, Singin' in the Rain experienced a rebirth when it developed a cult following on television, and again when it was showcased in That's Entertainment in 1974.
Singin' in the Rain is certainly the ultimate MGM musical.
People love that film. Everything about it was charming and so well done.
It's incredible that it's become like a cult movie.
We're a little surprised at the enormity of its fame and the acclaim that it's gotten, in all kinds of circles.
I don't think there was anybody in it who thought this would be considered the greatest American musical ever made.
It makes 10 best lists all the time, an international 10 best picture of all time.
Singin' in the Rain is a joy to watch. It's full of energy and humor.
It's a thing that is timeless.
I'll always be grateful to have worked on Singin' in the Rain, not only because of what it did for my career, but because I got to work under the tutelage of Gene Kelly. I was a very lucky young girl to have had the opportunity to learn from such a determined, powerful, and gifted man. He taught me an incredible work ethic, and after all these years it lives on, so thank you, Gene. Over the last 50 years, there have been enormous changes in the business. They don't make musicals much anymore. MGM has changed hands numerous times, as has this lot, which was once the birthplace for some of the greatest films of all time. But what hasn't changed is Singin' in the Rain. It's still wonderfully fresh, wildly exuberant, and will always give us that glorious feeling.